agreed to chair this meeting in such a short time. This is the seventh. Yes, sir. Sorry. Hello? Bilal, what's happening? All right. Okay, I think now. Okay. So, okay, first of all, thanks to both of you, John and uh, uh, Tania, for agreeing to take part in this lecture. So, first of all, I think John will be Professor John Eid will be chairing this meeting. And so let me just quickly introduce John. Uh, John is a professor of sociology and anthropology and visiting professor at Toronto University. He is also a former executive director of CRONAME, Center for Research on Nationalism, Ethnicity and Multiculturalism. That is linked with Roehampton University and Surrey University. And John has been involved doing various research in West Bengal, Kolkata, but more importantly and interesting to us, he has been involved with the local community Tower 100 for some number of years, and he did PhD on Bengali community in Tower 100. And John has also done many work on Islamization of urban space, globalization, global city, Bangladeshi British agency, and so on. So John is very apt for chairing this kind of meeting. Now, I think John will, before I pass on to John, I think let me just introduce Barrister Tania Ami. Barrister Tania Ami is a barrister in Bangladesh, and she is also a human rights activist. She joined Bangladesh High Court in 2091, and later on in 1993 she joined Supreme Court. Tania is the founder of Amir and Amir Law Associate, and she has a wide range of practices, including on foreign investment, infrastructure, etc. But she, most interestingly, I think important, she is in her own field very well known for commercial work and constitutional law. And also she always try to find various interesting alternative way of dispute resolution. So first of all, both of you is thank you very much for agreeing to try, because we have been doing this lecture for last 7-8 years. But this year is quite important, especially I think all of us are very aware of situation in Bangladesh. That makes more important why we need to continue about talking about Bangabandhu and Bangladesh, because it is quite right to say that there seems to be a deliberate, orchestrated attempt to rewrite the history and erase him, Bangabandhu, from the history. And that's why we decided to continue with this. But it wasn't easy for us to hold this lecture this year. But nonetheless, we managed to hold it in online. And Tania kindly agreed to deliver the lecture, and she has chose the title. We gave her the freedom, and I think the title is very fit for this year lecture: dignity, right to self-determination, and sovereignty. I think these are all crucial matters that we need to address. So, with this, I will pass on to John.
Thank you very much, Noor. Yes, This takes me back to 1971 when I was in Calcutta, undertaking research on Bengali Muslims who decided to stay in Calcutta rather than go to Dhaka. And in fact, a family had to flee from Bogra for their lives, and we were sleeping in the same room, about 8 of us. So this is brings back very personal memories of that time. But anyway, my job is really to get out of the way and hand over to Tanya. So over to you, Tanya.
Thank you, Professor John. Thank you, Mr. Nuruddin. Greetings to everyone. Today is a very special day, 7th of March, the historic speech of no other than Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. I acknowledge with respect the father of the nation. I acknowledge our first Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Tajuddin Ahmed, and the 4 leaders. I acknowledge the martyrs who sacrificed their lives. I acknowledge the Biranganas, the brave women of Bangladesh who had to suffer so much atrocities. And last but not least, I acknowledge my senior barrister Amirul Islam, who drafted the Proclamation of Independence of Bangladesh. I have divided this talk perhaps in 3 parts. And in the last part, I will talk about the present scenario. So it's the story of the people of Bangladesh. It's the story and a plight to establish dignity for the people of Bangladesh. And then how that transforms to the right of self-determination and eventually the sovereignty of the people. So unlike many other countries around the world, the sovereignty does not belong to parliament, nor does it belong to any individual. It belongs to the people, and the will of the people is supreme. So that is the journey I propose to walk with you today. Now, in order to walk that journey, we go back to the independence of the subcontinent. So there was an act of British Parliament in 1947, Indian Independence Act, by virtue of which 2 independent dominions were created. Mind you, the word is dominion, not states, certainly not republics. One was known as India, another was known as Pakistan. Now, the Viceroy of India, Lord Mountbatten, became the Viceroy of India, and India had its own government led by Nehru, and Gandhiji, of course, was there. And within 2 years, it gave itself a constitution, and it became a republic, an independent state, and continued to remain a member of the Commonwealth, but as a republic. The story is somewhat different for Pakistan. On the day when Pakistan was given this independent dominion status, the founder of Pakistan, known as Jinnah, he insisted that he shall also be the Governor General of Pakistan. So the loyalty of Pakistan remained with the crown in Britain. So therefore, it begs the question from day one, to what extent, if at all, Pakistan was independent. Jinnah therefore flew 2 flags. One was that of Pakistan, one was that of the Governor General of Britain. And this was a left out territory which never had any constitution nor any election. It was ruled top down to the barrel of a gun and force. So after Jinnah, the Governor General were known to subjugate governance which was led from the people, dismantled governments, there were initiatives to top down to create a committee which will give Pakistan a constitution. And in 1956, a Islamic Republic of Pakistan, somewhat a semblance of a constitution, was created, but it was not a full-fledged constitution, and it was never endorsed by the people. The Bengalis never acknowledged or accepted an Islamic Republic. Prior to that, the dignity of the people of Bengal was hurt very badly when the Bengali language was set aside as an official language of Pakistan. So the cultural identity was very much subjugated by the Pakistan authorities, which led to the language movement. So there was an attempt from the very beginning to make Pakistan an Islamic country where the pure language with the Muslims are supposed to be Urdu and not Bengali. Whereas the Islam that in the East, in East Bengal, people understood was an Islam of peace and inclusiveness, where we included and embraced people of different religion, culture, race, and color, whereas the Puritans in the West abrogated totally. So that tension was brewing, and it continued. And then the Iskandar Mirza became the president under this constitution, but then he, I think 4 times, dismissed the prime minister, which he had no power to do. Eventually, there was a coup, and Ayub Khan took over, and Iskandar Mirza introduced him as a president, as a martial law administrator. Then there was a lot of internal power play. He got rid of Iskandar Mirza and introduced basic democracy, abrogated the constitution that was introduced in 1956. And the basic democracy was no democracy at all. So that was Ayub Khan. And the whole of the resistance has been mostly from East Bengal. We wanted a free and fair election, and for Pakistan to be governed by way of a legitimate constitution drafted by the people who had the mandate through an election. So that was the route that East Bengal was trying to usher Pakistan towards. Eventually, Ayub Khan was the basic democracy, and Ayub Khan had to resign and handed over power to General Yahya Khan, who introduced the legal framework order on 30th March of 1970, by virtue of which he said that there will be a free and fair election, and it's not going to be based on parity, because this is what the West Pakistanis were trying to impose. The word parity sounds wonderful, that East and West will have equal representatives and say in the constitution, but in fact it is totally against adult franchise, because the population in East Bengal was a lot higher than that of the West. So adult franchise means one person, one vote. And if we are going to have a federation, if we're going to have a culture of democracy, then somehow the votes of the Eastern wing of the individual people in the East cannot weigh any less than a vote cast by the West. And in the meantime, the question of dignity, I refer back to that. It was kind of a neo-colonialism by the West Pakistanis. They had the 22 elite families who ruled the civil service, the bureaucracy, the army, the business, And from the East Bengal, we were producing jute, which was known as the golden fiber at the time, in 50s and 60s, and it was earning us foreign currency by the sweat of the people of the East. But that money was not coming to the East. The West Pakistanis, as if they're a colonial power, taking all the earnings of the East and investing all of it onto themselves. In the bureaucracy, in the military bureaucracy, there were discrimination, lack of dignity. Despite having merit and qualification, the people from the East were not getting any chance, were not inducted in the army. If they were in the army, they were not getting promotion that was due to them because West Pakistan wanted to have grip over the power. Same was true with the civil service, the CSP, and in terms of granting license and permit for various businesses, it was monopolized by the oligarchs in Pakistan. So the 6-point movement by Sheikh Mujibur Rahman was extremely popular, and the elections were fought on the basis of this 6-point demand. At the same time, from East Bengal, we rejected the notion and idea of an Islamic republic because from the East, the feeling was this is an oxymoron. A state cannot have any religion. Religion is for the individual, whether it's today it's Ramadan today. A state cannot perform Roza or Hajj. That is something to be done by the individual. So Parliament and the people are to be sovereign, and therefore Parliament would have the authority to enact laws. No other authority can subjugate or bind the authority of Parliament to enact laws, nor can anyone at that point in time can bind the hands of future Parliament. If there is mandate and there's election, then the Parliament, as representative of the sovereign people, would be eligible to enact laws and frame a constitution. So in 1970, December and part of early 1971, free and fair elections were held, and out of which from 7 December 1970 to 17 January 1971 to elect representatives for the purpose of framing a constitution. Now, in order to get to this point, the struggle of East Bengal and through Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and the party he led, Awami League, had been at the forefront of this. And it really is a culmination of that struggle in order to now get a free and fair election for the first time in Pakistan, to frame a constitution. As I stated from the very outset, Pakistan, to what degree it was sovereign or independent, we don't know, because this governor generalship continued till 1956. So there was this allegiance, and the founder of Pakistan, he himself became the governor general, and he was flying 2 flags. So Pakistan was therefore never independent. It never had a constitution. It never held any election. So the first election in the life and history of Pakistan was the election of 1970. And that had been, if you like, pressure was created, political struggle, and it was mostly from East Bengal. So now, once the elections were held, the people of Bangladesh elected 167 out of 169 representatives belonging to Awami League. And General Yahya Khan summoned the elected representatives of the people to meet on 3rd March for the purpose of framing a constitution. And he already publicly declared Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman as the Prime Minister of Pakistan. Now, Bhutto, on the other hand, was not ready. The West Pakistanis and Bhutto's party, PPP, was not ready to accept a Bengali from the East as the Prime Minister of entire Pakistan. And here again, the question of dignity and racism comes in. They were just not ready for the East, people from East Bengal to rule entire Pakistan, particularly the oligarch elites who felt that somehow they were superior to that of the people in the East. And somehow they are much more pure Muslims than those in the East. So that tension brewed, and that tension was played out through the office of Bhutto. And Bhutto kept saying, I'm in the West, you're in the East. So there should be two powerhouses. But if we believe in the adult franchise and Pakistan is to remain one country, how can there be two prime ministers? It just doesn't make sense. So on 3rd of March was the day when power was to be handed over from the military junta to that of the elected representative. But something very strange happened on 1st of March. So instead of fulfilling their promise, and while in conferring with the representatives of the people of Bangladesh, what they have done, they illegally postponed this roundtable meeting, which was supposed to be held on 3rd March indefinitely. So hence, despite an election, despite winning the election based on 6-point demand and the mandate to form a constitution for Pakistan, this meeting was indefinitely postponed on 1st of March. And then the fervor of the Bengali nationalism, and the Bengali nationalism, I need to define it. It was an inverse nationalism. It was an inverse nationalism in order to fight the chauvinism of West Pakistan. It was to find a religious, a cultural chauvinism and bullying that went on. So the inverse nationalism of the Bengali people were based on language and culture, where we didn't have the money, but we felt we had the cultural superiority. We were much more sophisticated. We were inclusive. We were progressive, whereas the West Pakistanis had a lot of money and wealth, but they were crass. They lacked sophistication. They lacked progressive values. So through this inverse nationalism, we fought the chauvinism of Pakistan. So, for example, in the parties, I remember in the 60s, our ladies would be dressed very simply with the sleeveless blouse and sari, and maybe just have a long hair and a bun with the garland of jasmine flowers and a light colored lipstick, whereas the ladies from the West would be full of glittery diamonds and neon lights. And we felt somehow we were far more sophisticated with this simple choti, and simple sari. So that was the ethos at the time. So we were happy writing poetries and exploring literature and culture and values of humanity, the progressive jurisprudence and philosophy, whereas the West was more preoccupied with buying and selling and in one bazaar and making money in the other bazaar. And we thought that was a bit crass at the time. So that was the kind of cultural inverse snobbery almost through which we fought and the West felt that they were Puritan Muslims, and they were somehow better than the kind of Islam that we practiced, and we were half Hindus of some sort, whereas the Islam that came to East Bengal never came to the sword. It came through Sufis and saints. So the Islam that we understood was an Islam of peace, equality, and an Islam which was inclusive with other religions and not a dogmatic Islam. So that was the tension that was brewing. Now, once we are in the month of March, so once this indefinitely it was postponed, Pakistan refused to hand over power, then the people of Bengal already formed a de facto government and a de jure government. So the feeling was in Bengal that the Pakistan authorities or the power base in Pakistan were illegitimate. Already there is an election. People have given a mandate. So Road 32, the Bangabandhu's residence, sort of became a center of government, kind of like 10 Downing Street here, if I have to make an equivalent analogy. And that the elected representatives led by no other than Sheikh Mujibur Rahman had the mandate of the people. So it was the de facto government and a de jure government. And from 1st March, there was total non-cooperation with the power base in Pakistan. So the dictates that were issued and the directives that were given from Road 32, that is how East Bengal was being governed. So when Yahya Khan tried to come to Bangladesh, permission had to be sought from Road 32 whether his plane can land. So when there would be curfew, when there would be the television, radio, the colleges, hospitals, how they would function, there was 32 directives that were issued under the signature of Tajuddin Ahmed, and based on that, the whole country was being governed. So Pakistan Authority had already lost total control over East Bengal. So when Yahya Khan came and then Bhutto followed soon after, they engaged in some sort of a deceitful exercise, as if they're conferring with the people. So instead of fulfilling their promise, while still in conferring with the representatives of the people of Bangladesh, Pakistan declared an unjust and treacherous war upon the people of Bangladesh. So they unleashed Operation Searchlight, and just prior to that, today is 7th of March. So the people were expecting, leading up to this, and already the flag of Bangladesh was being flown, and the tension was immense as to which side will break its nerve first. If Bangabandhu were to declare independence, then we would be considered secessionist, breakaway factions. So our leaders were trying their best to engage with this negotiation process with the Pakistan authorities. And the idea was that only declaration will be given once Pakistan unleashed an attack upon the unarmed civilian, not prior to that. So on 7 March, it's a historic speech. It's not just a speech. It was delivered in Bengali. It's considered a great poetry almost. It was so well structured and balanced, short of declaring independence. Bangabandhu more or less prepared the people that even if I'm not there to give any direction, whatever you have, create a castle in every home and defend yourselves. The movement this time is that of emancipation. The movement this time is to promulgate and establish our rights. So then, as tension had built up, what the Pakistan authorities were doing in a treacherous manner was that in the circumstances, they were gathering their arms, weapons, and their army personnel. They were bringing in through the Chittagong port. So they were taking all the preparations to unleash an attack. And their idea was that these Bengalis who are half starved, they do not have any army personnels, they have no weapons, nothing. We'll just crush and massacre them. It's just a matter of weeks, at best, just 30 days, a month. They'll be crushed and they'll be subjugated. They will never think about emancipation, independence, or vote, or framing a constitution of such lofty ideas. And so while this tension was brewing, Yahya Khan left. The negotiations failed, and he left the country about 10 p.m. on 25th March. And there was a huge sound as he left. And then the Operation Searchlight was unleashed upon the unarmed civilian people of Bangladesh. So there were indiscriminate killing and genocide. So this treacherous war, as it was unleashed, soon after midnight, on 26th March technically, Bangabandhu declared independence. So this was and exercising the legitimate right of self-determination of the people of Bangladesh. Because we had the mandate to form our own government. And the only person who could declare independence is no other than the person who was the undisputed leader of 75 million people. So I want to emphasize that no Tom, Dick, and Harry could declare independence because they didn't have the mandate. It would not be acknowledged legitimate under international law. The only person, so there was an election, and out of 169 seats, Awami League had 167 seats, and the leader of that party, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, is the undisputed leader of 75 million people, and he alone had the mandate to declare independence for and on behalf of the people. And that's exactly what he did. So on 26th March, this declaration of independence. What is also very significant here, this was only done after Pakistan declared war upon the unarmed civilian people of Bangladesh. So when your own army indiscriminately starts attacking upon its own people by operation of law, Pakistan has in fact declared war. So genocide has been unleashed upon the people of Bangladesh, the unarmed civilian. So war has been declared by Pakistan. Only upon that premise, in self-defense, Bangabandhu declares independence. That is the sequence of events. So we, the Bengalis, have acted in self-defense. We are unarmed civilian. We don't have any army. We don't have any weapons. We have nothing. All we have is some lofty ideas of democracy, of equality, of dignity. We want to establish our dignity of human beings, of human. And that's how it began. So soon after the proclamation of the Declaration of Independence, Bangladesh has not emerged as a sovereign republic. That happened within 2 weeks. So on 26 March, the Bangabandhu gave Declaration of Independence, but Bangladesh as a sovereign state is nowhere in sight. Very soon, on 10th of April, 1971, Bangladesh emerged as a sovereign republic. So the conduct of this ruthless and savage war, the Pakistani authorities committed and are still committing numerous acts of genocide and unprecedented torture, amongst other, on the civilian and unarmed people of Bangladesh. Consequently, by levying this unjust war and committing genocide and other repressive measures, the elected representatives of Bangladesh, who were mandated to give Pakistan a constitution, got together. And given this war and the repressive measures and the genocide, it became impossible for the elected representatives of the people of Bangladesh to meet and frame a constitution and give themselves a government. So the people of Bangladesh, by their heroic bravery and revolutionary fervor, had established effective control over the territories of Bangladesh. And hence, there was a meeting of all the elected representatives. They got together. And the people of, as they're honor bound by the mandate given to them by the people of Bangladesh, whose will is supreme. This is so important. Whose will is supreme, constituted themselves into a constituent assembly because they're honor bound. And after they constituted, the elected representatives metamorphosed themselves into a constituent assembly, and having held mutual consultation in order to ensure for the people of Bangladesh equality, human dignity, and social justice. As they're honor bound, the elected representatives, proclaiming that the will of the people is supreme, and in order to ensure for the people of Bangladesh equality, human dignity, and social justice, declared and constituted Bangladesh as a sovereign people's republic. And thereby, they ratified the declaration given by Bangabandhu, already made by Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. So, see the sequence of events. So it was there was no legal gap or lacuna. So the elected representatives got together as they're honor bound by the mandate given to them by the people of Bangladesh, converted themselves into a constituent assembly, and thereby, having held mutual consultation, they wanted to uphold human dignity, equality, and social justice. And the social justice comes from that background because of the chauvinism of Pakistani, West Pakistanis, denying East Bengalis access to business, to bureaucracy, to the military service, and just looking down upon them as somehow they're less human. They're not Puritans from a religious perspective, and of course, darker color of skin, most Bengalis, as compared to the West Pakistanis. So there was a chauvinism and racism, to a degree of racism. So hence the whole idea of social justice, it emerged from there. Dignity. So this is, I think, one of the very few, if not the only document, the birth certificate of Bangladesh, where we talk about dignity, human dignity. And that is so important. The whole human rights discourse is predicated to uphold human dignity. And when we talk about the security discourse, human security is also predicated upon ensuring and upholding human dignity. So this is how Bangladesh, we were born, and this is our birth certificate. So this instrument acted as the first constitution of Bangladesh. So based on this instrument on 10th April 1971, which incidentally was drafted by my father, Barrister M. Amirul Islam, This instrument is only 2-page long, and then the government was formed, and Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman was made the president of the republic. And it said that if for any reason the president is unable to assume office, then then Syed Nazrul Islam, the vice president, will discharge that function. And the reason why Bangabandhu was made the head of the state, there's a very good reason. Because the argument was that a foreign state cannot kidnap a head of state and bring charges of treason. That is absolutely a joke. It's an oxymoron. It's not possible. So this is in order to ensure the safety of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. And once they ratified the declaration made by Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman by the elected representatives, they also gave it retrospective effect, saying that this instrument will be effective from 26 March 1971. So there was no gap, there was no lacuna of any sort. It was very tight. And by making Bangabandhu the head of state, they argued that if Bangabandhu is not released unconditionally, then no head of state is safe, because any other foreign country can kidnap a head of state and try them for treason or any other offense. So this became an oxymoron, the charges against Bangabandhu for treason. Before this instrument came into being, this was a unilateral declaration of independence, UDI. We, the people, proclaimed our independence. We did not take any permission from any superior power or authority. As we saw that both in the case of India or Pakistan, when a colonial power is retreated, an act of parliament was necessary to give this independent dominion, create two independent dominion, India and Pakistan. No such thing occurred in the case of Bangladesh. As I said, Pakistan never had any government of substance which was led or which had mandate from the people. Pakistan never had a constitution which had mandate from the people. The first election, which we insisted, and because of our struggle and movement, political movement, we ensured that such an election was manifested. So we, the people, our constitution starts with these words, we the people. And our proclamation of independence, Bangabandhu, who was the undisputed leader, declared independence, and the instrument by virtue of which Bangladesh emerged as a sovereign nation, our birth certificate. There again, our elected representatives, after holding mutual consultation, metamorphosed and converted themselves into a constituent assembly, and in order to ensure human dignity, equality, and social justice, declared Bangladesh as a sovereign republic, and thereby ratified the declaration already given by Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman on 26 March 1971, and gave this instrument a retrospective effect. And finally, we also pledged our allegiance and resolved that we undertake to observe and give effect to all duties and obligations that devolve upon us as a member of the family of nations, and to abide by the Charter of United Nations. So we acknowledged ourselves as a member of the family of nation, and undertook to observe all the duties and obligations that devolve upon us accordingly. And based on this instrument, we negotiated with India. We had a government. So when we talk about Mukti Juddho and the freedom fight, we use the term fight or war. What we forget to tell ourselves is that there was a government. Bangladesh was a sovereign nation. So we removed the occupation army on 16th December 1971. But Bangladesh became a sovereign state effective from 26th March 1971. And based on this instrument, we negotiated with another sovereign country, India, to look after our refugees. About 1 crore refugees crossed over. Professor John was indicating about the the flight of the refugees, which he himself witnessed. We also sought training and arms from India. We sought from Mrs. Gandhi, Indira Gandhi in particular, that she should go around the world and pledge and seek support for the cause of Bangladesh. And here in Britain, the government at the time perhaps was not supporting us, but we acknowledged again the people of Britain. At the same time, the Nixon and Kissinger administration was supporting Pakistan. They were supporting genocide. They were supporting torture against women. They were supporting not democracy. That was the regime of US led by Nixon and Kissinger at the time. But again, we acknowledge the freedom-loving people of US and the West. I remember the concert, both George Harrison, the Beatles concert, which raised awareness. And mind you, in UK, in Kennington, the cricket ground, Goodbye Summer concert on 18th of September 1971. It was huge, where awareness was brought for the plight of the people of Bangladesh who are trying to establish democracy and dignity and sovereignty. Now, this instrument is very important and interesting. This is where I come to the second part of my talk, which is all about right to self-determination. Now, before the birth of Bangladesh, any country which tried, or any nation, whichever tried to declare independence or exercise their right of self-determination, they were called secessionist, treason. Within the framework of one nation, another nation is trying to emerge, that's treason. So Biafra example was very recent. They were bombed, East Rhodesia. So whoever proclaimed a unilateral declaration of independence, they all failed. Look at Palestine to date. Palestine they have not been successful in proclaiming their independence as a state, as a nation. They're still struggling. But Bangladesh, we're the first of its kind and a very proud legacy. How did we do it? Because we had the elected representatives who are mandated to do so. They were mandated to form a constitution, while Pakistan made it impossible, the Pakistan military junta, to give Pakistan a constitution. And since the will of the people is supreme, the Constituent Assembly proclaimed Bangladesh as a sovereign republic, where the will of the people is supreme. So now the will of the people is supreme. That's where the concept of sovereignty comes in. A sovereign republic, sovereignty. Who does the sovereignty, who does it belong to? So this right of self-determination is kind of like a magic incantation, which found its place in the Proclamation of Independence. That in exercise of the right of self-determination, this is a right which is recognized in the human rights instrument, civil and political right, and social and cultural right instrument. And before Bangladesh, no other people have been successful in exercising this right, which can only be done through their elected representative. So this is for the first time on the face of this earth, this right was duly exercised and manifested, and Bangladesh emerged as a sovereign republic. In recent times, Kosovo did the same, and the Kosovo's case went to UNGA, United Nations General Assembly. The United Nations General Assembly referred the matter to the International Court, and the International looked at the case of Kosovo, and this is a very interesting read. Look at the case of Kosovo. And in that, the International Court, the honorable judges, found that the Kosovo's case would only be legitimate if their case follows the precedent of Bangladesh. In fact, the proclamation of independence of Bangladesh is a model law. It is an international precedent today. The right of self-determination, any group of people, a sense of any a nationality, whenever they want to express that, the model law is that of Bangladesh. Bangladesh is the model example. Now, the birth of Bangladesh also shows that religion is not enough to hold a country together. If that was true, then Europe would be one country. Majority people in Europe are Christians. But you have the French, you have the Germans, you have the British, you have the various people with various language. Even in Greater India, the different states you have, all the states are based on different language. Punjabis, Gujaratis, Marathis, Bengal, Tamil, they all speak different language. So it is the state of a nationhood is based on it's language. And the birth of Bangladesh is very clear that you cannot have a country based on religion. That cannot be a unifying factor. And in a modern nation state, there are people with different religious backgrounds or people who do not profess any religion at all. So the nationalism is based on language and culture. So that is something very, very important as well. And the will of the people is supreme, which manifested itself in the 1972 Constitution. So soon after the birth of Bangladesh, within 11 months, in 10 months, India took 2 years. We took about less than 11 months to give ourselves a constitution, where Article 7 is very clear that the sovereignty belongs to the people, and the constitution, as a written embodiment of the will of the people, is the supreme law of the republic. Furthermore, if any other law is inconsistent with the constitution, to the extent of its inconsistency, that law is automatically void. So the constitution is a written instrument, which is the solemn expression of the will of the people. So the sovereign power belongs to the people. So any sovereign power in a modern state, whether it's the executive power, that of the government, the legislative power, which belongs to parliament, or the judicial power that belongs to the legal system. That three organs of the republic, as to how this sovereign power of the sovereign power, which includes all these three separate powers, are to be exercised. The people have spoken through the constitution that how this power is to be exercised to the three organs of the republic by way of a beautiful check and balance. And that has been embodied in the 1972 Constitution, which also was secular in character, that every person has the right to profess their religion, but the state shall not have any religion. So that is what the issue was with Pakistan. Along with the 6-point demand, this a constitution which is going to be secular in character. So the separation of religion from the state, while in the temporal world, people who have the sovereignty, all sovereign power belongs to the people, and the people have, through the three organs, have expressed to the written constitution how this sovereign power is to be exercised. And therefore, Parliament is sovereign to enact any law it so chooses, provided it does not contradict the Constitution. So Parliament is also bound by that, because this Constitution is as a solemn expression of the sovereign will of the people. At the same time, the Constitution is not rigid, it can be amended, and the people have expressed that it can be amended through two-thirds majority in Parliament. So this power of amendment has not been given to any government, leave alone an unelected government as it is at the moment. It's been given to Parliament. So the challenge that Bangladesh is facing, I think we are running out of time, so I'm going to condense as much as I can. The whole, some of them are trying, at the moment we are hearing the Islamism, the radicals. We are the first country, majority Muslim people, who have given ourselves a constitution on secular democracy. It hasn't happened anywhere. People, majority Muslims, wherever they're living, whether it's an oxymoron like Islamic Republic, a republic cannot have a religion, where they're saying that the Sharia law has primacy, so Parliament cannot enact any law, whereas here sovereignty belongs to the people. There is no theocracy. In other countries, there's a certain family or a caliphate or an emirate. English equivalent would be a princely state or a monarch of some sort. So when you have a monarch, so all the three organs of the republic, as in a modern state, so the executive power, the judicial power, the legislative power, all belongs to one person, the monarch. The court of the monarch, the wish of the monarch, the old definition of law is the command of the sovereign is law. So whatever the command the sovereign says, the will or wish of the monarch, that is the law. In the court of the monarch, there could be guillotine. So the executive power, absolute power, belong to the monarch. And in the court of the monarch, the monarch would also resolve any dispute. So the judicial power was also exercised by the monarch. So whatever the monarch's religion was, that was the state religion, because there was no distinction between a state and that of the monarch, because the monarch was the sovereign. In a modern state, that doesn't happen. So here, what Christianity went through in the Middle Ages and the struggle of Christianity to separate the church from the state, Islam came much later, and Islam hasn't done that yet. Islam is still going through that process. And Bangladesh was the first country that did that. Now, this is the tension whereby Bangladesh has to be undone, and whereby it has to be converted into a theocracy of some sort. What does theocracy mean? That the laws are divine. And those who are ruling, they're ruling by this divine power or divine prerogative of some sort. And these laws are given. So a political party like Jamaat Islam, which incidentally I challenged their party registration, because their party constitution is repugnant to the constitution of Bangladesh, because they do not believe in Parliament's ability to enact laws, because laws are divine. So it begs the question, why do they want to participate in elections? And these divine laws, we also ask the question, only they seem to know what these laws are. So one of the question, it begs the question that where, when, how did Allah give power of attorney to political parties like Jamaat Islam to enact God's laws. Because in Islam, we don't have a pope system. In Europe, when the historical struggle of Europe was Rome, and Rome was claiming that it had a pope system, so all the other kingdoms in Europe were somehow subordinate to Rome, and they all had to pay homage to Rome because the pope was there. We don't have a pope system in Islam. So how does these political parties assume or arrogate themselves this power to enact God's laws? And that is also self-contradictory. In fact, we need to also look at the Medina Charter in the Islamic history. When Prophet Muhammad took the Muslims to Medina, there was a common pact between Muslims, non-Muslims, non-believers, pagans, Zoroastrians, Jews, of different communities, and they had a common pact. And after the name of Prophet Muhammad, may peace be upon him, Hazrat Ali wrote, Prophet of Allah. He took the pen and crossed it out and saying, I'm not signing this pact, the Medina Charter, as Prophet of Allah. We are signing this as co-equal leaders of different communities. So in Medina, religion to their own, but Medina belongs to all. And Medina was never governed based on any divine law. So I would argue, therefore, that Islam is inherently secular. While in the temporal world, the sovereign people demand accountability for those who will serve them in government, in the spiritual world, most Bangladeshis do have belief in a higher power, higher authority. So Bangladeshis, we can make a distinction between the temporal and the spiritual world. So these Islamists, they try to confuse themselves and try to intentionally sometimes misguide themselves intentionally and confuse themselves between the temporal and the spiritual world and try to misguide and confuse people. And that's where the tension is today in Bangladesh also. So if we look at it through that lens, the attack upon the minorities, the attack upon the women, women cannot play football, how the women will dress, and self-appointed police, self-appointed mob who are going around. Even today, Hizb ut-Tahrir, which is a banned organization, which again arrogate themselves to govern through a theocracy, through divine law and divine power, they are very uncomfortable with this concept of sovereignty. Because that sovereignty, unlike Britain, you have an unwritten constitution, parliament is sovereign. There was a quarrel between the monarch and parliament, and of course we had lawyers like Coke who said no representation and no tax. I won't go into that. In that quarrel, parliament won and parliament becomes sovereign. We deconstructed sovereignty further down. So sovereignty in Bangladesh, in a written form of constitution, belongs to the people. And the Islamists have a problem with that because they feel the sovereignty is divine and they are somehow representative of that divine power on earth. And that is their prerogative to rule and govern. And this is why the Islamic states, ISIS, and whether you look at the countries in the Middle East, that is how they're governing, through divine power, divine representatives, and arrogated themselves that power, whether it's through a family or an individual or some sort of a caliphate or some sort of a majlis, name it, whatever nomenclature you so choose. Whereas Bangladesh is an aberration. So where the people of Bangladesh who fought for their dignity were hope for Muslim people around the world. But we're a nightmare for Muslim rulers around the world who want to rule through divine power and establish theocracy. And this is the struggle when they talk about Muslim Ummah, you and I, most of us who come from an Islamic tradition, we understand as a brotherhood and sisterhood of Muslim people. However, what they mean is one government. And this government is based on divine power. And they have, therefore, the divine authority. That is what a theocracy is all about. So, lastly, I will just conclude by saying, and I'll be happy to take questions regarding what's happening currently. And the current situation, I think, can be understood from this perspective. So, in human civilization, if we look from the very early days, we had the gods who were divine and they were ruling the earth. If we look at, all ancient civilizations, the Greeks, the Egyptians, and then what we had slowly, we had the god kings, mortals, half mortals, who had this divine power. And then, of course, sovereignty was deconstructed further down. So when the god kings were ruling, their source of power is divine. And then questions were asked, if they had divine power, why do they need to take money from the people to rule and govern? They should do so from divine power. And then, of course, that if they must tax people, then there must be representation. So sovereignty was deconstructed further down, and from the monarchs of the divine individuals, it traveled down to parliament, as it happened in Britain, as it happened in UK. In a written constitution like Bangladesh, we deconstructed sovereignty further down. So it doesn't belong to even parliament. It belongs to the people. The will of the people is supreme. And as honor bound, our elected representatives proclaim that they are duty bound, honor bound. As elected representative, they declare that the will of the people is supreme, and hence, after mutual consultation, in order to establish, I again repeat, human dignity, equality, and social justice, Bangladesh was born as a republic. And the word equality includes secularism, equality of all people, irrespective of their color, gender, or religious persuasion, which found expression in Article 28, 29 of our Constitution, which we gave ourselves within 10 months. So our Constitution is autochthonous. Again, that is very different. We are the authors of our destiny. We are the authors of our Constitution. It's autochthonous. So let me end there. And with the current situation and the tension in Bangladesh, the dystopia that we are seeing, it is that at times there's assertion from the defeated forces who wants to establish authority based on divine power. And the birth of Bangladesh, along with the 6-point movement, when Pakistan gave itself a constitution in 1956 as an Islamic republic, we fiercely opposed that. And Pakistan never had a constitution. The constitution that they have now was promulgated in 1973, after the birth of Bangladesh, and by then Bangladesh already had a secular constitution. So that has been the struggle of the people of Bangladesh for dignity, for equality. And equality also means gender equality, emancipation of women. And while we have this in a de jure position, but the struggle of Bangladesh is how to make it a de facto reality. And to that extent, we are still struggling. So we have a de jure position, our constitution, our proclamation of independence. We made a 180-degree U-turn towards the human dignity, equality, and justice. We have that as a de jure position, but the struggle post the birth of Bangladesh is how to make it a practical, everyday reality.
Thank
And
you very much, Tanya. Sorry, I know we've been doing injustice to you because it's so wonderful. I want to go on listening to rest of it, but I'm quite
I stop.
aware
Thank
about the longer time. And I would like to allow little time for John to sum up. So, John, over to you, and just say some concluding remark, and then conclude the meeting, please. Thank you, John.
Mm. Well, it's such a rich talk, actually. And I just wondered, I think the key thing was that was whether Bangladesh is similar to other countries and other struggles, or whether it is exceptional. And I was thinking not so much about India, which is an obvious example, but I was thinking about Malaysia and how Malaysia has somehow managed to hold countries together that are very dispersed, because the argument was that Pakistan could never hold together because it was separated by a thousand miles, whereas Malaysia somehow seems to um, survive. And I just wondered whether that is a similar case to Bangladesh. I was just wondering whether you had any thoughts about the similarities, not with India, but with Malaysia.
Thank you for that question. The concept of sovereignty is not very clear as to where the sovereignty lies under the Malaysian constitution.
Okay.
They have different kingdoms. It's almost
Yeah.
like a feudal structure, but they have kind of kings, and it rotates.
Right.
So it's not clear whether for that particular federal state, the sovereign,
Right.
whether it's the king or the people. So
I
here
see.
in Bangladesh, it's undisputed. The sovereignty belongs to the people, and the will of the people is supreme. So in Malaysia, it's a different federal structure, and each state has a different king or a monarch of some sort,
Right.
and it rotates. So that's so it's not clear who has the sovereignty. Where does the sovereignty lie?
Right. So, but is the implication then that if West Pakistan elite decided to rotate power, then that probably would have this kind of crisis would never have happened?
If they were to do that, then it would be against the adult franchise. So somehow, West Pakistanis, and that's what Bhutto was talking about, they either hum udar tum, meaning either meaning in West Pakistan, hum meaning me. I'm the king here, and in Bengal, Mujib, you govern Bengal. So the word they use is parity, which sounds it's deceptive, but it's not parity. It's based on adult franchise. So
Right.
we did not authorize our representatives to negotiate away our dignity. This is why I
Right.
come back to the word dignity. It's one person, one vote. So
Mhm.
somehow, if it was parity, it would mean that the votes of East Bengal, the individual vote carried less weight than the individual vote of West Pakistan, and that cannot be.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So that's where
Yeah.
the dignity comes in.
Okay. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention was in Calcutta in 1971, there was quite a lot of kind of feeling that somehow the Bengal could be one again, and I think it's a very romantic notion. But you did mention in your talk the kind of cultural linkages across these borders that were set up after India was partitioned.
Yeah, very arbitrarily by when the British retreated, very arbitrarily
Yeah,
done, and that's
yeah.
a totally different talk or a discourse another time, where it was divided in such a manner where the extended homes or homestays, the living quarters were in India, and the cooking at the kitchen was in Pakistan. So, and the partition was very, very painful. From my generation, we can scarcely understand how painful it was for the generation who had to undergo that, and the scars are still there. But coming back to your question, the support and the solidarity we got from West Bengal, Mrs. Indira Gandhi, the Prime Minister of India, could not have done what she did had it not been for the support we had from West Bengal. In Tripura, I think there were more refugees than the locals, and they just opened their hearts and embraced and accepted us. So that feeling, that sentiment is very rare. And India could not have gone out of its way to do what it did. Of course, from a legal and a moral perspective, and even non-refoulement, which is a concept under the laws of UNHCR, that you cannot send back refugees to face persecution when they've crossed over. So a neighboring state has an obligation and a duty to accept us. But that's all legalese. But the kind of feeling that you're talking about, it was incredible generally from India as a whole, and particularly about West Bengal. They identified themselves with our struggle. They felt as if it was happening to them. They felt the pain. And that is unprecedented. And as I said, in certain areas, there were more refugees, Bangladeshi refugees, than India, like in Tripura. And they didn't mind. And, you know, this was one of the world's largest refugee problem. And was the world's most successful repatriation, because Pakistan tried to push this propaganda that there's a civil war, Awami League are communist, they're burning factories, and hence people are fleeing. They're economic migrant. There's a civil war going on. It was not a civil war at all. So
sorry, we have only very short time, few minutes for breaking fast. I know it is really getting interesting and exciting, okay? But only people got about less than 5 minutes to break the fast. So, John, do you want to meeting?
Well, basically,
I am sorry.
thank you so much, Tanya, and thank you very much, Noor, for organizing this. And we could obviously go on much longer, but thank you very much for a very rich lecture and discussion. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. Thank you, John. And we'll
Thank
be
you.
in touch.